Great. All right, we're going to get started, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am Maria Bernier, our State Data Coordinator. My pronouns are she and her, and we are here today to talk about your public library annual report for fiscal year 2022. And today we're going to cover a lot of information, as I said. There's a lot to get through, but we're going to start with some basics about where you find the form, how you move around it. We'll look at some specific questions, and hopefully you'll have some important takeaways at the very end if you can stick around for the full hour. I do want to say, if you have come to a webinar like this last year or the year before, where I talked about how to complete your annual report, you're going to hear a lot of the same things, because in fact, I'm working from the same script that I have updated just a little bit over the past year. So you may hear me say many of the same things you've heard before, but hopefully it just reinforces your understanding and your learning and your interpretation of the annual report. So just be aware of that. And we will move on to talk about the differences between the state annual report that we're talking about today and your report. Isn't that funny? That title didn't come out. I'll have to work on that. So if you have been to one of my webinars in the past, again, you've probably heard me say this kind of thing, but I don't know that the word has really gotten out to everybody. So I'm just going to keep saying it, that our state annual report is really just a snapshot of some specific numbers related to your library. This is a report that every library in Connecticut is responding to, and most of the public libraries across the country and in the territories are doing a very similar report for their own libraries. So I'm sending our data to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for inclusion in their public libraries survey, which is the national picture of public libraries. And in order to make that something comparable from state to state and place to place, we ask a lot of the same questions in every library in every state. So there are a lot of questions that I cannot change. There are some questions that I can change because we're allowed to add some in each state. But for the federal questions, it can take a long time to change any question. It's a 2 to 3 year process to go through the whole question proposal and review and tweaking and voting and finally implementing it in the annual report. But as I said, we have some flexibility in Connecticut to add our own questions, and we can be a little more responsive there with what we ask of you here in our state. So that's the state annual report, and it is in contrast to any report that you're creating for your own library. And you'll see as we go through the form that in many cases, I'm really asking only top level information, really kind of basic summary information about what's going on in your library. And a great example of this is reference statistics. Right now, we're asking only one question about all of the reference transactions that your library is responding to over the course of a year. And you know that's an intense part of what your library does, right? Like you have an entire department dedicated to reference, and we're asking you one question right now. So there's a lot more that you can do at your library with your own statistics. And I encourage you to do that, right? Like break out your reference stats so you get different categories, and maybe you're looking at different times of the day, different people, however you want to do it, up to you. But please capture the stats that are relevant to your community and your library so that you can give them back to your funders and your board and your capital F friends when they're interested in learning about what you're doing and the impact of your library. So those numbers are under your control, and they're telling your story. So that's the difference between the big state annual report that is very formulaic and fixed, and your own reports that can be a lot more fluid and under your control. So let's talk about what's going on with our dates. The annual report covers the same time frame. It's always July 1st to the following June 30. And this is according to the state fiscal year and according to many of the Connecticut Public Library's fiscal years as well. So that's always the period that it's covering, a 12-month period. And you will either be tracking your numbers throughout the year, like your program numbers every week, every month, or your circulation numbers every month, or you'll be counting something at the end of the fiscal year as of June 30. For instance, that might be your holdings or your finances. So keep in mind, some of this data you can be capturing throughout the year, month to month, on reports that you're managing on your own. And then some things you will grab just right at the end of the year to complete this particular report. I do want to draw your attention to that line in red. There is a new deadline this year, November 1st. This gives me a little more time to take all of the data that you have sent me and crunch it and put it into that big, beautiful statistical profile, and then put it into the chart and report creators that you guys are looking for at budget season to really talk about your case for funding at your library. So I want to make sure you have those dates available to you. I also want to mention these slides are available on our website, and I'm going to show you that next. And I'll show you where the slides are so you can find them if you need them. So let's pop out of here. Is that all I wanted to tell you while we're here? Let me check my script. Wasn't that clever of me to write a script so that I make sure I address everything? I think this is also where I want to mention that if you're not tracking your stats according to the annual report categories, you could consider doing that to make your job easier at this point with the annual report. Obviously, as I said, you can count whatever you want, however you want to do it, but there are some ways that you can make it easier on yourself over the course of the year to do this annual report. And I would encourage you to strive for consistent counting methods from year to year, so that as you are doing your tracking, that you are tracking the same thing every month and every year, so that the charts that you get from me eventually are consistent, right? That they're actually tracking the same thing from year to year. So consistency is a big word, and I'm going to talk about accuracy too. That matters. So that is what I wanted to tell you before we hop over to the website. Chris, when do I think the statewide data will be available? So the statistical profile is customarily available. There's usually a draft like right at the end of December, and then the final version comes out in early January after everybody's had time to get all their changes back to me. So early January is usually the final version, but I can customarily get the draft out in mid-December, if not earlier, and I'm really hoping for the earlier this year since our deadline is earlier. All right, so let's pop out of this and go to the website. So this URL, you don't have to write down. I'm going to send it to you in an email at about 4 o'clock today. So when you click on that link that I send you at 4 o'clock today in an email that will come from Middletown Library Service Center, you'll get to this page, and this is part of our LibGuides. So at DLD, we put all of our information onto our LibGuides. And so if you ever hear us talking about the LibGuides or about our website, it's this. Now, this is the statistical page, but let's say you had just our DLD homepage, right? How would you find us? So from our homepage, which is included in my signature and all of my coworkers' signatures, you can find the library statistics right here in this big cloud, the link cloud over here, right on the top left. You're going to look for library statistics. Or up here on this menu bar, which appears on every single guide, every single page, you'll find the statistics under services. And the services are really our core statewide services that we offer. And you'll just scroll down to library statistics there. Or if you're really in a pinch, you can use the search box, which appears on every page as well. You can type library statistics, you can type annual report, and at some point you will get to the statistics for Connecticut Public Libraries. So that's what the homepage looks like for the stats. And we are looking at annual report, which is the second tab here. And because we're librarians, we put a lot of information on here, right? Like, so this stats guide is basically a full reference book. And so each of these tabs is a whole nother chapter, and there's divisions within there. But you'll want to pick the annual report tab, which is the second one here. And as we scroll down the annual report page, there's a box here with additional tabs within it. So layers within layers, right? It's involved. But what you also want to look for here is 2022 annual report. This is where you'll find all of that great information about how to fill it out. You'll actually be able to grab the form and instructions. So we're going to spend our time really on this tab today. But I also want to point out while we're here, there's a tab right here describing changes to this report. And you may recall that I did some webinars in June describing what those changes were. And you guys came out in fabulous numbers for that. So I appreciate that. But if you ever want to revisit those changes, just click on that tab. You'll see them listed, and you'll also be able to get over to the recordings of those webinars. So that's available to you. And if you have questions about programs, you'll want to pick this tab right here. Again, a lot of information about programs, because you may recall if you've done the annual report for a couple of years, all of our program questions changed and really became incredibly elaborate over the past couple of years as IMLS delved into the program questions, both by ages and type, whether you were on-site or off-site or recorded or streamed or how you did that. So programs became a lot more complex, and there are some tools there to help you figure out how to track those over time and what you're counting where. And state aid and previous year's reports are here as well. So there's a lot of information. But I want to scroll down on this page right here on our annual report page. Here's these reminders right here at the top, our deadline right up there in red for you. A lot of descriptive information here. And I put the descriptive information up here at the top in hopes that people would read it. So I hope that you actually will read it. Humor me and skim through it if you wouldn't mind. But here's some tips on how to complete the form. My email address is all over this page. It's all over the form. You can find me if you have questions, right? And please do get in touch. I do appreciate when people ask me questions, because if you don't ask me questions, you know, we don't have that chance to have a conversation about what you're putting in your report. So again, as we scroll down, the recording from today is going to go on our data playlist up on our YouTube channel. So make sure that you click that. I'm also going to send you that link in the email at 4 o'clock today. So if you need it, you'll be able to find it. And our slides for what I showed you today are right here as a PDF. So if you need those slides, if you need a reminder of any of the dates or the deadline, that's there as well. There's a couple more slides we'll get to at the end. And then here is all the good stuff. Okay, so here finally is the Excel report form for 2022. But first, there's a video about how to use it, covering some of the things we're talking about today. There's a list of the questions. So if all you want is a list of the questions, you can click on that PDF and print it out. I think it's 8 or 9 pages or so, or maybe 15. But you can see all of the questions and share them with people. You can also print the instructions and definitions. That's a handy thing to have available. There's a guide right here to completing the report, which is pretty much the same content as the video. So whichever learning style you are, whether you like to watch or whether you like to read, there's some options there for you, and some other links down here as well. So let us actually open this annual report. You just click on it, and in theory, it opens. And we will download it and click it. And it's always going to come with that, you know, protected view, right? So make sure you enable editing. And then the very first thing you want to do is make sure you save this somewhere, right? This is your own personal copy of the report. So it's always up there on the LibGuide, available to you anytime you want to download another copy of it. But once you download it and you start working in it, you do need to save it. So make sure you do that either on your own computer, your server, or wherever you guys put things so that you've got access to it. But make sure that you are keeping a copy. Otherwise, you're going to type stuff in it and lose it, and that would break both of our hearts. I do want to say I just made a little tweak to this form this morning. So if you downloaded a copy of the form in the past week, you'll want to go back to the LibGuide and download a fresh copy of it this afternoon and work from that, entering your data. The tweak that I made is not significant. So if you are using your old form, you'll be fine. You'll figure out what it is probably, but just a little tip that it's updated today. What else do I want to tell you here? These instructions, again, you can print these out in 9 pages. You are not going to read all these instructions, right? Like, nor are you going to memorize them. I don't do that. Nobody does that. The most effective way to find something is that keyword search, Control F, right? And that's a handy little tool to use in Microsoft products. We're librarians, so we're really familiar with that. But Excel has a lot of features in the find option here that I want to point out to you because they can mess up your search. So as you are searching, say you are searching for where to put your ARPA grant, you'll just type in your search term up here. Leave this unclicked. You don't care if you're matching the case. Definitely leave this one unclicked. You do not want to match the entire cell contents because you want to leave it as broad as possible. You want to be able to search within cells. So you'll leave both of those unchecked. Now notice you can search within this first sheet, or you can search within the entire workbook, which is all of the sheets. That's a nice option to pick. Maybe you want to look in the entire workbook for where ARPA is. Searching by rows is a perfectly valid way to do it. And let's try looking by formulas and see what we find for ARPA. So if you wanted to figure out where do you put your ARPA grant in this year's annual report, maybe you didn't put it in last year and you want to put it in this year, that's going to go in federal income, which is question 8.6. So that's a really quick way to find things in the instructions and definitions as well as in the survey. I can tell you more than half the questions people sent me last year were questions they could have answered using a Control F in the instructions. So I encourage you to give that a try, see what you can find with that. Empower yourself and use your librarian skills because a lot of information is already in there prepared for you to find. So that's the instructions and definitions. And you can see at the bottom here, we've got 3 different sheets within this workbook. Let's click next on the survey one. And if you don't see these, your other option right up here at the top is just go to survey. There we are. So before we pick anything, let's navigate our way through. I do want to point out this very first column on the left where it says US or CT. That's an addition I made last year so you could get a sense of where this question comes from. Is this a national question? So it's a US question that everybody in the United States is answering, and that's what we're sending up to IMLS. Or is it a Connecticut question? And that's the CT. So this is a Connecticut specific question. IMLS actually does not care what your director's name is, but I care very much who your director is and what their email address is. And there will also be an abbreviation F for feeder question. That was kind of the best thing I could come up with within 1 or 2 letters. And those feeder questions kind of add up and get compiled into a national US question that I give to IMLS. So all of that kind of comes together and gets fed back to IMLS in a different way. So that's what the first column is there. Now, I also, while we're here, I want to close my ribbon. I want to collapse that, which is this little caret here, so we have a little more room to work with. And I also want to zoom in a little bit, which is way down here on the bottom right. I want to zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. We're at 110% right now. That's a nice feature for you too, right? Depending on what screen you're working on or how many eyeballs and how many sets of glasses you have on, go ahead and zoom in. It's a really fabulous tool that is available to you in Excel. Another thing that I added recently is way over here on the right. Woo, we have a column, for last year's answers, which has traditionally been in there. A few years ago, I added this other column, so you actually have 2 years of historical data here in the report form. And then this column for your notes. So go ahead and type your notes in there so that you have some breadcrumbs for how you got to this information. So maybe it's in your circulation section. You say, we compiled these 2 numbers, or I asked Sue for this information. Go ahead and just leave yourself some notes in there so that next year, when you're ready to do this report, you have that information in your printed copy available to you so that you can recreate that same number consistently and accurately from year to year. So that notes field is there. And I reformatted the printing this year so that if you print, it'll come out on legal size paper. I think it comes out in landscape mode on legal size paper, but it will print all of those columns. So if you make yourself a hard copy of this, you'll have all of that information. So you can just put it in a binder, right? So next year you just flip through and you've got all your notes and your answers there available to you. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to tell you for the time being. So what we're gonna first do is start right here, right at the top. It says first in big capital letters. Click on this cell to choose your library. And I'm gonna scroll down. No, it's not gonna let me scroll. Excel is so annoying with these big long lists. I'm gonna pick Hartford just because they're one of the more complex library systems in our state. They've got multiple branches and bookmobiles, and I can show you lots of fun things. But you can see now that I have picked Hartford, all of that information filled in, right? So last year's answers have filled in, 2 years ago has filled in. So that data is now available to you. You can go ahead and change those things. So let's see what I want to say about this. Many of the answers in the first section are pre-filled because your address doesn't usually change that often, right? Your phone number doesn't change that often. It can save you a little work by filling that in for you. But here is the first blank. So the first thing you're going to type in is an email address. You'll be able to tell which things are needed and which things aren't. Right here, we'll have to fill in this question as well. Is our building wheelchair accessible? You can see, oops, and you think you might apply for a construction grant. See how it has that cute little note, choose from the drop-down menu? Many of the answers are provided for you from a controlled vocabulary list. We're familiar with that, right, as librarians? But this gives me an opportunity to, again, make the data consistent so that I have to do a little bit less tweaking on my end, just giving you some specific answers to choose from. So those lists are pre-populated for you. And let's see, there's lots of pop-up comments. So you see these tiny little red carrots, teensy weensy things in the upper right corner. That means there's a pop-up note. So if you just hover over that question, the note will pop up and give you a little bit more information about that particular question to help you fill in what you need to do. So again, you're seeing there's a lot of tips and tricks and hints within the form itself. So just use those to your advantage. That information is provided for you to help you make this form easier. Now, if you print a copy of this and you share it with your coworkers, obviously those pop-ups aren't going to be popping because it's a hard copy, right? So just give your coworkers a clue that there may be more information. They may want to look at the electronic copy of the form in Excel, or they may want to look at the instructions and definitions to see if there's more information about those questions. So it all works together that way. New questions. I have a specific notation in here so you can tell which questions are new. And our first new question is 2.9. So you can see right here in question 2.9, I actually put in the question itself that this is new this year. So that is your visual note to self, that there's not going to be an answer here from last year or the previous year because we didn't ask that question before, right? So it's something new. It may take you a minute to figure out what the answer is, but that's just a quick and easy way for you to see what is new this year right there in the form. All right, we have some arrows built in here. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Right here, if you need to move quickly through the form, you can click on next section. If you want to keep hopping down, if you want to go to a previous section, you can go to the top of the section and it'll get you up to the first question. I find that a little disorienting. I'm a scroller myself, so whatever method works for you, there are some options in there. And while we're here, I want to point out, let me scroll up just a little bit. These boxes that are shaded in blue right here, that's an indication that those are calculated numbers. It's a sum. And you can see right here in the question, I'm adding up some of your answers from earlier in the form and creating a sum. And that's what I'm going to report to IMLS as your total print items, total non-print, total physical items. So you can't change the blue boxes. Those are stuck. And in fact, if you try to type in it, you'll get this little box that sort of yells at you and says, you can't do that. This is a protected sheet. So that's how you'll know. And make sure you're always typing your answers in the answers column. If you try to type them in the question needs answer column, you're going to get that box. So that's a question I get sometimes. People say, it's telling me the sheet is protected. So just make sure that you are working in the answers column and typing your answers there. Then you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, let's talk about some specific questions. Let's go right back up to the top, section 1, and look at some specific questions. This has been an interesting one. These questions about the director's name and email address. You may have seen in the help wanted ads, we've had a lot of turnover in library directors over the past year or two. So you will want to give me the director or acting director or interim director who is in place as of the date you submit your report. So if it is October 1st, you're submitting your report, you currently have an interim director, you'll put that person's name and email address right here in the form for me. That's an interesting question, and it keeps happening more and more often. Now, as we scroll down, question 1.12 about square feet of main library. This is actually the square footage of everything within your walls. So not just public space, not just, usable space, but you get to count all areas of the building that are occupied, even if it's off limits to the public. Your cellar, your attic, machine room, count all of that square footage as your main library building. And this is really important primarily for libraries that are applying for E-rate funding, category 2, that can give you some additional funding. There's some great money available for that through the E-rate program, but you get more money if you're a bigger building. So go ahead and count all your square footage for me. And I think over COVID, while some libraries were shut down, they remeasured, and that was a neat thing to see, that still the same building, still the same footprint, but the square footage changed. So that can happen. All right, let's scroll down to the very last question in section 1. Tell us something your library did that you are proud of. This was a new question last year, and we got some amazing answers from this. I put them into a Word document, and it was like 30 pages long of all of the things that you guys did over the course of the year that you were proud of. And first of all, it made my heart sing, and I shared it with my coworkers, and it was wicked fun to see what was going on. But we also used some of that information to give to journalists to put into articles. We also used some of that information to tell our legislators about what libraries were doing in the state of Connecticut. We also used that information in many different ways. So if you've got a great story to tell it. And you can send me pictures as an email attachment with your report. Whatever you've got, go ahead and send it to me, because you never know where it's going to end up. So, and also, please use complete sentences. give me something, a little soundbite, perhaps, that I could reuse in a different way. We love those. Those are really fun. So that's been a wonderful addition. I encourage you to get creative with that. Okay, so let's scroll down to section 2. What do I want to tell you about section 2? Let's go right back up to the very first question here, your annual public service hours. So again, we've had this question with COVID. You're counting the hours when the building was open to the public, people were coming in, patrons were using your services. So you're not counting the hours when the door is closed and you're not open to the public, right? Because that can happen a lot, where maybe you're in the building working and the staff is there from 9 until 10, doing some great work for that hour, and then you open to the public at 10 o'clock. So you're not going to count that first hour, but you get to count the rest of the hours that are posted for being open. So that's how that one works. And likewise, Question 2.2 here about the total number of weeks your building was open. Again, that's open to the public. People are coming in, opening your doors, walking into the library. So that's what we mean by open to the public. And likewise, question 2.5, total annual library visits. These are the people who are coming into your library, right? They're stepping over the threshold, walking through the door. They're actually in your library. This does not include anybody who uses your drive-through window or your curbside service or your outdoor service, because they are not coming into the library. But we do have other questions in the report where you can count those people, right? We've got actually separate questions where you can count curbside or outdoor service. So capture those and put them in that other question. Let's see, I want to scroll down to 2.6. This question about total registered resident library users, which basically means how many library card holders do you have that are town residents as of June 30th, the end of the year. Please do not give me numbers for people whose cards have expired. I made it bold this year, right? So please exclude any cards that expired before July 1st. So this does mean you should go through your records and actually count current, live, unexpired library card holders and send me a realistic number. I get a little skeptical when people send me more card holders than there are people living in town. So I usually ask those people to give me a recount, but this is a number that has meaning. So please actually pay some attention to how many library card holders you have. Thank you. Let's go scrolling down to 2.13, the number of Wi-Fi sessions on your library network. A lot of libraries have been moving toward counting this number. And again, I encourage you to do so. So whether you're using a piece of software to count this, whether you're using some kind of click counter, please figure out a way, either with your IT person or your consortium, to start counting the usage of your Wi-Fi. Because we know for a fact, looking at the trend charts, that the number of public computers is decreasing, the number of uses of those public computers is decreasing. So you need to be showing in comparison that people are using your Wi-Fi, and that internet access is still very important in your community and is a crucial part of the services that you're offering to your patrons. So go ahead as much as you can, start counting that Wi-Fi number. That would be fabulous. We want to start showing that impact. Now, as we scroll down, there's that famous reference transactions question, that one question. This year, there's only one question about that. This is non-platform specific, right? So whether people are visiting you in person, whether they're phoning you, emailing you, chatting, texting, however you conduct your reference work is how you can count those. So please include everybody regardless of how they are actually communicating with you. And what else do I want to say? Do not include your directional and policy questions in here, please, right? Oh, it says right there. Please do not include directional or policy questions or assistance with a copier or printer. Just a reminder there. Okay, link as we scroll down. Here's the link for the branches and bookmobiles. We're going to click over there for a minute just to see what it looks like, because it's here. So if you had a bookmobile, all 5 of the libraries in Connecticut that have a bookmobile, there would be some questions here to answer. And then if your library has a branch or more, there's additional questions here about service hours and weeks that the branch is open, number of weeks that the branch was closed or had limited occupancy. That's really all we're asking about those branches, because their other numbers in terms of circulation, reference, holdings are lumped into the full survey. So you can click on the return to survey link right there, pops us back to the other sheet. And let's keep going down as we move. So section 2, there's the programs. And this is the thing that exploded over the past couple of years. So if you are using the program and activity tracking spreadsheet that I created a year or two ago, I tried to make it a little bit easier to transfer numbers from that spreadsheet to this annual report. So if you're using that program spreadsheet, these colors right here are the same. So in the program spreadsheet, on your annual report, your state report tab, if you're looking for programs for children ages 0 to 5, it's pink. And then if you're looking for programs for children ages 6 to 11, it's orange. So it's just a little bit of a visual cue. Again, hopefully the colors are visible to you and will help you just eyeball where that information goes. I also added a tiny little bit of shading right here so we can differentiate the light gray program questions from the slightly darker gray attendance questions. So again, it is dependent on that ability to see the colors and the subtlety of those. Hopefully that will help you transfer the numbers more effectively. Great. Are the spreadsheets available online as well? Yes. So the program and activity counting spreadsheet is available. I will show you where that is when we go back to the website afterward. It's in that programs tab that I mentioned. So if you're not using it, I really think you should be using it. It's going to make your life so much easier. If you're tracking all of your program stats over the course of the year, this part of the annual report is going to be super simple to fill in. And Catherine, I'm glad to hear it was helpful. That's actually that's why I made it, right? Because I knew this was going to be a pain in the neck. So giving you the tools to make this a little bit easier. So the programs go on and on and on and on and on. And now there's totals. And now there's program expenditures. And then there's self-directed activities. So, right, it just bloomed. But this means I can give you some really fascinating numbers over the course of time about the range of programs that your library is offering for various age groups and how you're doing them. So I think it's going to give us some really fun numbers and charts as we move forward with this over time. So that just keep an eye out for that to develop as we go along. It got a little bit more complex this year because as I scroll back up, we separated out the kids. Oh my God, it really does keep going. We separated out the kids so that it's now ages 0 to 5 and 6 to 11 is separate. Last year was sort of a transition year and we lumped together the 0 to 11. This year we're breaking them apart. So that's why it just keeps going and going and going. But hopefully it will be okay for you. Let me know if it's not. Let's scroll down. I want to mention in your programs for general, intergenerational, family, all ages, this is the IMLS catch-all for like everybody, right? If it's an intergenerational, if it's all ages, if it's like chess club, or if it's a music concert that everybody's invited to, or a PG movie that the whole family is invited to. That's kind of an intergenerational or all ages program. That's what you would count there. And let me see, we don't need to talk about totals because you already know how to do totals. Let's just skip ahead to section 3 about collections. And there's some instructions right up here at the top of section 3. Often in the report, there are some instructions stuck at the top of a section or at the top of a subsection to give you a little bit more information about what follows. So please go ahead and read the report form. Again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of information in there to help you move through this and to guide you as you're doing it. So this is really about holdings as of July 30th. So holdings as of the end of the year. And again, you're reporting just the things that your library owns or you're leased or that have been licensed or donated to you. You're obviously not counting anything you borrowed from the Middletown Service Center or on your CLC swaps. But there are a lot of great questions about your specific holdings. I'm going to scroll down to past the foreign language stuff to these digital collections. These are, I think, fairly simple and straightforward drop-down menu choices for you for the ebooks. Let's see, databases. Databases and electronic collections includes your newspapers, your consumer reports, as well as things like Freeding, Freegal. Is Freeding still a thing? Freegal is still a thing. Hoopla, IndieFlix, Gale Virtual Reference Library. So that's all the type of thing you're going to collect, you're going to count in this number of licensed databases and electronic collections. And we've pre-filled in that number of 38, which is the number of databases that we provide to you through Research at CT. So that's there. And you'll just put your local number there. And then the totals will say you had 4 databases on your own. You can see how this sum automatically calculated and added up those 2 numbers. So that's how those blue boxes work. Now, sometimes people ask, you know, question 3.21 here about the number of downloads or displayed things. And they'll say, do you have a list? Like what am I counting? And unfortunately, I usually have to refer you back to the definition to say, okay, well, how does that database work? Is it an actual download? Is it a checkout? Would it count as a circulation instead, where you would count it somewhere else? Is it actually a download? Are you displaying it? So sometimes we have to talk and negotiate about specific databases that you have access to. And often I'm looking at the definition because you are more familiar with those packages than I am, to be honest. I don't have a lot of experience with those databases. So we often talk about that. So drop me a question if you need help with those. And then my encouragement here is once you figure out how you count those things, that's where you use the notes column, right? So over in notes for your future self, give yourself some clues about how you came up with that statistic, that successful retrieval count, so that next year you can recreate it the same way. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. I think I'm talking a lot. We're scrolling down to section 4, which is about circulation, and see right here, there's a little bit more information. Just go ahead and read that before you get started. If you're part of a consortium, they should be able to help you with this section through some reports or some exports from your ILS. So make sure that you are utilizing the full power of your consortium benefits to your benefit. That's why they call them that. Let's go down to 4.34. What do I want to tell you this? Downloadable audio other. This is the magic box where you get to put all of your streamed and downloaded songs. So I think maybe Hoopla has songs you can download, and those babies like fly off the shelf, right? So that's like thousands of songs in some libraries. So those are going to go in downloadable audio other. So question 4.34, that is where they all end up. That's a question I keep getting. Let's scroll down now to 4.40A, Simply E and Palace checkouts. So if your library, sorry, let's scroll up a little so you can see that whole note. If your library is providing access to Simply E or provided access to Simply E and you're moving toward Palace, then you can get a number of checkouts on those particular platforms. Brad can help you with those questions. And you see also in the pop-up box at the very end, there's an actual URL there that will help you figure out your stats for your own library. And unfortunately, you can't like copy and paste that. You kind of have to type it, but it gets you started. Right now, the platforms do not have a way that Brad can get all of your numbers at once. So we're hoping to work toward that. And we're hoping to get a little more granularity in terms of audiobooks versus ebooks. Right now, all you can get is one great big number for your library. So that's what you're going to put in there. And over time, maybe we'll be able to get a little bit more specific about what people are borrowing. But that's where your state provided e-resources will go. All right, ILLs, as we scroll down, in 4.5 and 4.51, interlibrary loan transactions. You may remember I eliminated a couple questions about borrowing and lending out of state. So it's a little more simple now about borrowing. But remember, these are interlibrary loans. They are loans between libraries, in contrast to a borrow it loan, which is where an actual person walks into your library. They live somewhere other than your town, and they're showing you their library card from their hometown library. And they say, I would like to borrow an item that is sitting on your shelf. That is a borrow it transaction, and you count those separately, right? Remember, you're tracking those, and that's a whole nother form that you send to me in February, and I reimburse you for those borrow it loans. So those are separate. Those are not interlibrary loans. Just philosophically make sure that you are keeping them separate in your counts. Now, you can include in your ILLs the loans between libraries in your consortium. So if you have consortium holds in your network, you can count those. If you allow patron placed holds, you can count those as ILLs as well. So that number can grow a little bit. Let's scroll down now to section 5 about your staff and volunteers. Let's see if I can get that whole pop-up box to come. So the first thing is you're only counting volunteers who are working in the library. And that was an issue during COVID when a lot of volunteers were working from home, like we all were, right? But you should only be counting volunteers who are working physically in the library. And you can be really thoughtful about who your volunteers are, right? That can include your teen activity board. It can include your actual board of trustees. It can include your capital F friends. It can include people who are doing community service hours at your library. So take a look at who is volunteering for your library and start grabbing those hours. And you will see that a lot of people are putting a lot of hours towards supporting what happens at your space. So grab all of those numbers. Those are all legitimate volunteers, because I am presuming you are not paying your board members and you are not paying your capital F friends. So count anybody who's giving you their time. Those are volunteers. Let's scroll down now to this section on current salary. So you'll notice this is current as of the fiscal year that we're in right now. So fiscal year 23. So as you are filling out this report, we're actually now in fiscal year 23. So just give me the current salaries for all of these different positions, right? So what you are actually paying them right now as you're filling out the form. And if you can give them to me in dollar amounts and dollar ranges, that's most helpful. I do try to translate them to that dollar amount, because then it becomes something a little more comparable, so that people, as they're searching, can look and say, okay, this is 40 hours a week at X dollars per hour versus 20 hours a week at X dollars per hour. So I'm trying to make them a little bit more consistent, so that in the statistical profile, it's easier to understand that information. Now, I also get these questions sometimes about 5.13, 5.14, and people say, well, do you want the department head? Do you want a librarian? You know, what number should I give you? And I say, well, what'd you give me last year? So this is again where the notes come in handy for yourself. So you should decide whether you're giving me the head of the department's salary, or you're giving me maybe the salary range for the people within that department. That would be okay too. But take a look at what you answered last year and the year before, and try to give me something consistent with that. And then leave yourself a note for next year as to how you did that. Oh, while I'm talking about leave yourself a note, I do want to point out your notes here is not going to get saved in this form from year to year. You actually do need to print this out, or just refer to your electronic copy that you submit to me. So you still have access to that data. It's just not going to populate in this form every year. You need to type new notes for this year as to how you got that info. All right, let's scroll down to section 6. If you don't have access to last year's, I can probably send you a copy of last year's form. Not everybody uses this column. So drop me a note if you think there might be something in this column that you don't have access to. I can take a look and see if it's in the copy that I received. It's not always, but we can take a look. But you will at least have access to the last 2 years worth of answers. You just won't have access to the notes necessarily. Okay, so section 6. Yeah. This whole area here about benefits, all of these answers are pre-filled from last year. Obviously, if something has changed, go ahead and change it here, right? You can just type in a whole nother answer here, and that's good, right? So just change it if you need to. You can certainly do that. And scrolling down to section 6, this is where we had our COVID questions in section 6, and I'm also kind of transitioning this to all of our questions about social justice and equity and diversity, inclusion and accessibility. I think those are going to start moving into section 6, and you'll see that some questions have relocated here. Some of the COVID questions are still here, but these new questions as we go down, new. So this is where we have the EDI question, the fines, they're all here in section 6. Hopefully these will be easier for you and pretty straightforward. Most of them are yes, no. Section 7, 8, and 9. 7 and 8 are about your income. Section 9 is about your expenses. I am guessing pretty much everybody has a bookkeeper or a finance person, maybe a finance department, maybe a treasurer, maybe somebody in town government who helps you with the money. They should be helping you with all of these questions about your income and your expenses. So go ahead and dole out the work and get people to help you, because that's what their job is. Make sure that you are counting your income in the year in which you receive it and your expenses in the year in which you spent them. So you're not just counting, whatever was appropriated, you're counting what you actually received and what you actually spent. So make sure that you've got your dates clear on that. As we scroll down to section 8, question 8.4 here, this is where you're going to put your ARPA money, your Everybody Learns money that should be done. If you got a PPP loan that extended into that fiscal year, you'll include it there. You can see how it's noted right there in the little pop-up note. It's also available to you if you do a Control F in your instructions and definitions. So that's how you can find that. Let's see, question 8.212 about fundraising activities, including monetary donations from your friends groups. So some friends do it a little differently. If your friends give you a check for $10,000, that's income. That goes into this question, 8.12. If instead your friends pay a bill for you and you never see the money, that goes into a different question. That goes into, we'll get there, 9.17, that's where that goes. So if, for instance, your friends pay for a database, the bill goes to the friends, they write the check to the database vendor, that goes into 9.17. So there are 2 different ways of handling your friends' money. Just be aware of that and follow which one you're doing. Capital income and expenditures, there's some information here about capital income. Also take a look at capital expenditures for a definition of what those might be based on the annual report, as opposed to what the definition might be at your library. So you'll want to make sure with capital expenses that you're reporting those correctly in the form. Let me see what else I want to tell you while our time comes short. 9.10, which is computer hardware expenses. This includes things like Constant Contact, Envisionware, website design, things like that. Anything that is somehow software related or IT related, you're going to lump into 9.10. I'm just going to scroll down to the very end here. Finally, we're at the end, section 10. Oh my gosh. So you're going to fill in the name of the person who completed this. They're got a certification. And when you're done, this yellow box must be 0. If it's not 0, that means you have left a question unanswered. And you will look at this column, answer needed, to find out what question that is. So make sure you're sending me something where this box is 0. And at the very bottom, scroll, 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 here's a comment box where you can leave me a note if you want to tell me something. If there was something wonky at your library, if you had a change in directors midway through, something like that. But here's my email address, and you're just going to save this as an Excel file and email it to me when you're done with it. So that is how that will happen. And I will send you an email. Just be aware, I will acknowledge your message at some point. I will not acknowledge your message immediately because at that point I am being bombarded by messages. And so I will reply to you absolutely at some point, but I cannot promise it will be immediate. So just be patient, right? Your message will get through to me. It will all be okay, and I will reply. So give us each a little bit of grace period there. Okay, I want to hop back to my presentation here because I want to leave you with a couple of pieces of advice before we go. Oh, come back to me. My advice to you. Start now, right? I know that I just released the form a week ago, but you can still start now. Please don't wait until the last minute because you will stress yourself out. And as we saw with COVID, stuff happens, right? You cannot plan for life, but you can plan for yourself. So please plan ahead. As a reminder, use that notes column so you remember how you calculated something because you want to recreate it the same way next year because you are striving for consistency in counting from year to year and accuracy. So you want to make sure that you understand the question, that you are grabbing your numbers consistently, and that your numbers are accurately representing what your library did, that your patron counter is accurate, that your Wi-Fi counts are accurate. So please go for those 2 themes, consistency and accuracy. And if you can grab those stats each month, please do. It's going to make your life easier. And in fact, I'm doing a webinar a week from today at 2 o'clock with some other libraries that will show you how they keep their stats in databases, in Excel from month to month so that it makes everything easier and makes the reports easier and they have a better understanding of what's going on. If you have coworkers, please distribute the workload, right? If you have finance people or circulation staff or tech services staff or reference staff, let them help you with this report. That's what they get paid to do as well. And when you get stuck, take a look at those pop-up boxes, read the definitions, read everything in there. There's probably an answer there. And if there's not, you can find me, right? Drop me an email. That's usually the easiest way to get in touch. And as a reminder, the final data that you send me is what I get, right? And what I feed back to you is only as good as I get. So again, consistency and accuracy so that in the future, I am able to give you accurate trend reports and accurate charts for what's been happening at your library over time. So please send me some good data. There's my contact info. There's an evaluation form that I'm going to email you in an hour so that you will have that. I love to hear from people about what made sense to you in the webinar, what worked, what didn't work. I can make some changes to future iterations of this webinar based on your comments. So please let me know what worked and what didn't for you this time around. Taking a look at the chat. Yes, I will email info for the webinar. Yep. You guys always drop me a note anytime and we will be in touch. And I think I have long exceeded my time. So I'm going to say thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your time and attention. Drop me a note if you need me. And I will see you guys again some other time. Okay. Thanks for being here. Bye, everybody.